It's estimated that we are in control of 5 to 10% of our body, leaving 90 to 95% to involuntary processing. Sure, we can move our skeletons, our muscles, speak when we wish, and even control our breathing for the most part, but our heart rate, digestion, hormonal regulation, metabolism, immune response, body temperature, even our consciousness for the most part are completely outside of our control. Therefore, it's immensely important how we handle our 5 to 10% of controllable processes. Interestingly, when we focus on the controllables, two things happen. Firstly, what is within our control expands from closer to 5% to closer to 10%, meaning we are even more in control. And secondly, those involuntary processes improve also. Now, I don't need to tell you that the brain is powerful, but sometimes we forget just how powerful it is. Henry Knowles Beecher was a military doctor during World War II and reported on 225 soldiers with severe war theater wounds. He surveyed only those men that had severe wounds, such as extensive peripheral soft tissue damage, compound fractures of a long bone, a penetrated head, chest, or abdomen. Beecher made a remarkable discovery. Despite life-threatening injuries, 75% of these badly injured soldiers reported little or no pain in the immediate aftermath of their wound. He didn't know at the time, but psychologists today understand that the soldiers' physical pain was tempered by the emotional relief of escaping from exceedingly dangerous environments. Okay, park Beecher's story and consider a different case report, this time from the British Medical Journal in 1995. A 29-year-old construction worker walked into the emergency room after having landed foot first on a 15-centimeter nail which was sticking up out of the top of his construction boot. According to him, it had penetrated the leather, the flesh, and the bones. The report noted that the smallest movement of the nail was so painful that he was sedated with fentanyl. But when the nail was pulled out from below and the boot was removed, it became apparent that the nail had penetrated between the toes, meaning the foot was entirely uninjured. The soldiers with life-threatening wounds reported little to no pain, while our construction working friend reported immense pain despite having no injury whatsoever. What this tells me about the brain is that it can be tricked. Now, in these examples, the tricks were inadvertent. The soldier's pain gave them a ticket to the safety of the hospital, and the construction worker deduced the likelihood of his foot being impaled by the nail. But can we purposefully trick our brains and use it for good? In my previous video, I spoke about two voices competing for attention in your mind. They produce conflicts like this. I know I should go to the gym, but I can't find it in me to go. Or I know I should apologize, but I don't want to injure my pride. Your prefrontal cortex tells you what you should do, while your amygdala tells you what you want to do. I know I'm angry right now and I need to step away. That's your prefrontal cortex. But yelling at this person feels better. That's your amygdala. I know I need to save money. Prefrontal cortex. But this gadget on Amazon is so cool. Amygdala. The pull of pleasure is strong, but you are not designed to give into it always. Benjamin Franklin said that many a man thinks he is buying pleasure when really he is selling himself to it. So how can we trick our brains, trick ourselves into foregoing pleasure when we need to get things done, when we need to step up even when we don't want to? Well, the most well-documented way to control our controllables and therefore trick the brain into doing more of what we want is known as cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT is by far and away the most revolutionary method to manage and regulate ourselves in the direction of our choosing. Clinical psychologist Judith Beck said, "The power of CBT lies in its simplicity. Small, manageable changes in thought and behavior can lead to profound improvements in everyday life." So, what is it? CBT is based on the idea that our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors are interconnected. That is, our thoughts can influence our feelings and behaviors, our behaviors can influence our feelings and thoughts, and our feelings can influence our thoughts and behaviors. This is called a bidirectional relationship, wherein each one can be influenced by and influence the other. Okay, how does this work tangibly? Let's take a look at 3 examples. No matter where you start in the CPT triangle, you'll always find yourself affecting the other 2. Let's start with thought. You might have a thought that says, I'm going to mess up this presentation. You may then feel anxiety and fear. The behavior, perhaps, is avoid preparing or you procrastinate. What happens if you start with the feeling? Well, you might have sadness after rejection. Your thought might be, I'm not good enough for anything, and the behavior might be to withdraw from social interaction. What happens if you start with behavior? Well, say you exercise regularly. The thought may be, I'm capable of taking care of myself, and then the feeling might be increased confidence and reduced stress. What this tells us is that we are not ultimately beholden to our feelings, or at least we don't have to be. We constantly find ourselves in situations where we don't feel like doing something. You don't feel like going to the gym. You don't feel like socializing. You don't feel like tidying up. The buck can stop with the way you feel, but it doesn't have to. If you're like me, you certainly want to be able to push through the emotions that hold you back from doing those things you know you should do. And all of us can motivate ourselves for a week or two, maybe even 1 month to do anything. But how about 10 months? How about 10 years? It's a statistical inevitability that you will wake up one day and not want to do the things that you know you should do. CBT gives us a way around this. The next time you find yourself not feeling like going to the gym, go. Once you start working out, CBT suggests you'll start feeling like it. When the daunting project seems too overwhelming to start anyway. Within 5 minutes, you'll find yourself interested in spending another 5 minutes. I find it helpful to remember what Jerome Bruner said on this. You're more likely to act yourself into feeling than to feel yourself into action. Now, perhaps you're thinking what I thought. Obviously, that's what I should be doing. But the problem is that I never go and I never start. But now it's different. Now you know about CBT. You know the outcomes of your efforts and how your feelings can be modified by behaviors. Whereas before, you might have resided yourself to a thought process such as, I don't feel like it, so I won't go. Now that process might be, I don't feel like it, but I know I will if I go. Knowing the outcome at the finish line can help us at the starting point. Author Ernest Newman noted, the great composer does not set to work because he is inspired, but becomes inspired when he is working. Beethoven, Wagner, Mozart, and Bach all settled down day after day to the job at hand. They didn't waste time waiting for inspiration. Start with the action, and the inspiration will come. Now, CBT is a great mental trick, but there are other mental tricks that we can employ to get ourselves over the edge of starting. While CBT will have the largest impact on your mentality in the long term, there are other mental strategies you can use to spark yourself into discipline in the short term. I have personally experienced success with each of these at different stages of my life, but see which ones work for you. The first one is the accountability method. We've all heard of accountability partners. They don't usually work. What starts off as an exciting partnership to go to the gym turns into a bonding experience of skipping the gym. This sort of accountability works wonderfully when the motivation of one partner is high while the other one is low, but it fails entirely when both partners have low motivation. In this scenario, there is no cost to failure, so let's make it costly. What if every time you didn't go on a 2-mile run in the morning, you had to pay a friend $50? You're still accountable to them, but in a different way. When implementing a method like this, it's important that you give them the ability to ensure your compliance, to audit your compliance. Using the example above, you might send them your Strava, an app that tracks runs with geotags and timestamps. In this way, they can see when you've achieved your goal for the day and when you need to pay up. All right, number 2, the distraction method. You've likely leveraged this method already when you listen to music as you clean or fold laundry. The idea is that menial tasks are so boring and easy that we avoid them. If, however, we pair them with something that we enjoy, they become tolerable or sort of background noise as we complete them. Calling a friend while we cook, clean laundry, fold laundry, go on a walk, or any other task that requires little attention but is still important can motivate us to start and finish that task. Other distractions I've utilized include listening to a podcast or music. The ultimate goal here is to pair something you don't like doing with something you do like doing. Number 3, the 2-minute rule. When it comes to more daunting tasks, the 2-minute rule can come in very handy. As we've learned, CBT can change your feelings toward things by changing your behavior first. Forcing yourself to do something for 2 minutes gets you started and may be enough to keep you going. If not, then at least you've started and finished 2 minutes worth of that task. I've implemented this for large work projects that I wanted to avoid like the plague, and on the occasional day, the furthest I got in 2 minutes was powering on my laptop and opening the file. Later that day though, since it was already open, I started my 2-minute timer again, and sure enough, I found myself working substantially longer on it, maybe 10 minutes. This was not even close to being in the vicinity of completing it, but at least I started. Number 4, this is one of my favorites, the if-then method, also known as habit stacking. Habit stacking is similar to the distraction method in that you will pair activities and tasks, but not always complete them at the same time. For example, you may say something like, every time I brush my teeth, I do 10 push-ups. When I set my alarm for the next morning, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. When I finish working out, I tidy up my room for 5 minutes. Another way of looking at this is by implementing an if-then mentality. If I sit down for a meal, then I have 2 glasses of water. If I'm on the bus or train, then I put down my phone and I read. If I'm getting angry, then I'll count to 10. Keep in mind that this method is heavily rule-based, which means you're exposing yourself to guilt, shame when you don't adhere to them. Number 5 has become much more popular in the last 50 years. It's known as gamification. Depending on how you operate, gamification can be an immense motivator to your everyday life. The infamous world of CrossFit has exploded by leveraging the concept of gamification into an otherwise mundane activity, Olympic lifting. Maybe we can leverage it also. Gamification requires 2 factors: a system of measurability, a desire to improve. Some examples you've likely heard of are Duolingo for language learning, Strava for running, Fitbit for fitness, Habitica for daily tasks, Goodreads for reading. The goal of these applications is to excite you by making your progress visible. There is no internal tracker for counting the number of words you know in another language, but Duolingo tracks your learning by modules that tell you how much, in their estimate, of a language you know. Strava gives you every metric you could possibly want regarding running, such as distance, time, speed, and even a geoplot of your run. By creating a log of your progress, you're more likely to continue. Okay, so what if there's no application for something that you want to get better at? Well, make your own system. I have not used Goodreads, but because I read at least 10 pages a day, by day 250 of any given year, I've read 2,500 pages or about 10 books. Gamification works really well for competitive people, and its usefulness is only heightened further when it's shared amongst several individuals. This creates a sort of leaderboard effect. If you are the competitive type, perhaps be competitive with yourself and think about something that's traditionally difficult for you to measure that you could gamify. Number 6 is the finger snapping test. When I was in my teenage years, I had a small grass field at my home that I would play soccer on. There were goals on both ends, making it perfect for small-sided games with my friends. One Sunday, my friends were coming over to play soccer with me, and I noticed that the grass was a little long. Not too long to play on, but enough to make me question whether or not I should mow it. I really didn't want to mow the lawn, and I had a battle in my mind back and forth whether it was worth the effort or not. At some point in my mental debate, I asked myself, if you could snap your finger and it would magically be done, would you do it? Immediately, I knew that the answer was yes, which signaled to me that the only thing holding me back from having done that was effort, not desire. I really wanted it done, I just didn't want to put in the effort to do it. Since I had now identified the sole driver of why it wouldn't be done, my laziness, and I don't want to think of myself as lazy, I mowed it. Now, you may think that the answer to the finger snapping test is always a yes, but it's not. If you were to ask me while I'm working out if I could snap my fingers and this workout would be over, I would almost always say no. The same is true if I could just snap my fingers and end up in another country. Why? Because I actually enjoy the process of flying or going to the gym. In other words, the effort is not the reason that I would or would not do those things. But when it comes to the dishes or errands, I find myself wishing that I could snap my fingers and have them done. I want them done, I just don't want to put in the effort to do them. But because I don't want to think of myself as a lazy person, I do them. The last one, and this is by far the most important, do things you hate in the morning. Psychologist Roy Baumeister and others have shown that exerting self-control consumes glucose in the brain, leading to what they call ego depletion, a temporary reduction in willpower. Ego depletion is the theory that self-control or willpower is a limited resource, which gets used up as we exert effort to regulate our behavior, emotions, or decisions throughout the day. In other words, our willpower is highest in the morning and depletes throughout the day. People that know me would say I'm a reader. This couldn't be further from the truth. I do read, but it takes every bone in my body to get me to read even a single letter. In the mornings, the very first thing I do is press the start button on my coffee machine. The very next thing I do is sit down with that coffee and read. As soon as I do, I find myself enjoying it. But even with my heightened morning willpower, I can feel my mind finding every excuse not to read. Perhaps for you it's not reading, maybe it's working out, responding to emails, cooking at home, finishing work. Regardless of the activity, your likelihood of doing it is highest in the mornings when your ego depletion is low. Your brain makes a lot of efforts to trick you every day of your life. I hope these provide some methods that you can use to trick it back.